A woman gives birth on the floor of a cave, somewhere in what is now East Africa. It is quiet except for her breathing and the small, helpless cry of the infant now lying against her chest. That cry is a problem. The baby cannot lift its own head. It cannot cling to her fur, because by now, her ancestors barely have any. It cannot walk, cannot feed itself, cannot survive even one night alone. In almost every other species on Earth, a newborn this defenseless would be a liability the group could not afford. And yet, somehow, this fragile, half-finished creature is about to become the most dominant animal the planet has ever produced. Here is the strange part. The very thing that made human babies so dangerously vulnerable, so costly to keep alive, is, according to many researchers, the same trait that nearly drove early humans to extinction more than once. And it is also, many scientists now believe, the reason we are still here at all. By the end of this, you may never look at a newborn baby the same way again. Somewhere inside you, right now, is the fingerprint of that vulnerability. It's in the way you learned to talk. It's in the years, plural, not months, that it took you to become capable of taking care of yourself. It's in the deep, almost involuntary pull you feel toward children, toward teaching, toward protecting people who are weaker than you. Every other primate on Earth is born ready or close to it. A newborn chimpanzee can cling to its mother's body within hours. A newborn gorilla can grip a branch. Human infants can do almost nothing except cry, sleep, and demand an extraordinary amount of energy from the adults around them. This isn't a flaw evolution somehow overlooked. It's a trade-off. And understanding that trade-off explains something most people never think to question: why human childhood lasts so absurdly long compared to every other animal, and why, underneath the surface, you still carry the instincts of a species that once teetered on the edge of disappearing entirely. To understand where this vulnerability came from, you have to go back roughly 2 million years, to a moment when the ancestors of modern humans were doing something almost no other primate had done before: walking upright, full-time, on 2 legs. Bipedalism solved a lot of problems. It freed the hands. It let early hominins carry food, carry tools, carry infants across long distances. But it came with a brutal architectural cost. Walking upright required a narrower pelvis for balance and efficient movement. At almost the exact same time, something else was happening. The hominin brain was expanding, generation after generation, into one of the largest brains relative to body size in the animal kingdom. A narrow pelvis and a growing skull do not belong in the same evolutionary story. Something had to give, so the body compromised. It's a concept researchers call the Obstetric Dilemma, and the solution it forced was almost reckless. Give birth earlier. Push the baby out before it's finished. Here's what that actually means. A newborn chimpanzee's brain already has close to 40% of its adult size wired up. A human newborn's brain has about 25%, the other 75%. Most of the wiring happens after birth, out in the open, with no womb left to protect it. In a very real sense, every human being reading this was born 3 to 12 months too early. That is an enormous gamble. Picture a small band of early humans, maybe 20 or 30 individuals, moving across a dry, wind-scoured landscape a few 100,000 years ago. A mother in that group is carrying an infant who cannot support its own neck. She cannot forage as fast. She cannot run as far. She cannot fight off a predator while holding a baby that offers nothing back. No strength, no defense, not even the ability to hold on. Now multiply that mother by every fertile woman in the group and stretch that vulnerability out, not for weeks, but for years. Human children take longer to become self-sufficient than the young of almost any other species on Earth. Over a decade before they can reliably feed and protect themselves, and by some measures, closer to 2. For a species surviving droughts, predators, and violent shifts in climate, this should have been fatal. Fewer productive hands, slower movement. Years of sustained caloric cost per child with no guarantee any of them lived. And here's the part that should unsettle you. Some researchers studying ancient population genetics believe human ancestors went through at least one, possibly several, severe population bottlenecks. Moments where the number of breeding individuals dropped so low that the species' entire future came down to a small handful of survivors. The evidence is written directly into your DNA right now. Modern humans show far less genetic variation than a species this widespread and this old should have. The exact signature you'd expect from a population that once nearly vanished. We were quite plausibly close to disappearing, and the very trait that made us so fragile, helpless infants requiring years of intensive care, is one of the leading suspects for why. Here is where the story bends in a direction most people don't expect. That same vulnerability, the thing that should have doomed us, forced early humans into a behavior that almost no other primate practices at this scale: cooperative child rearing. A helpless infant that takes over a decade to become independent cannot be raised by one mother alone, especially not while she is also trying to gather food, avoid predators, and possibly care for other children at the same time. Something had to change, or the species simply would not have continued. This is exactly what some researchers, including anthropologist Sarah Blaffer-Hrdy, believe happened. Early human groups shifted towards something called cooperative breeding. Grandmothers, older siblings, aunts, even unrelated members of the group, all of them stepping in to feed and protect children that weren't biologically theirs. That almost never happens in the animal kingdom. Most primates raise their young completely alone. Human infant helplessness, in other words, may have forced early humans to become radically more social than any primate before them, to trust each other, share food with each other, and rely on each other in ways that had never been strictly necessary before. The very weakness that could have ended us appears to be the pressure that built the foundation of human cooperation. Imagine that same small band, but a generation or two later. Night has fallen. A fire burns at the center of camp, controlled fire being, itself, one of the great turning points in human history, dated by archaeological evidence to at least 1 million years ago in some regions. Around that fire sits a child too young to hunt, too young to gather, too young to do anything of immediate use to the group. And yet an old woman, past her own reproductive years, is feeding that child anyway, telling it something. Where the water is after the rains stop, which plants are poison, how to remember the shape of the hills that lead home. That single scene contains something extraordinary. The transfer of knowledge across generations, made possible only because the group tolerated, fed, and protected individuals who could not yet contribute anything physical in return. No other species on the planet does this at this scale, and evolutionary biologists increasingly believe it may be one of the central reasons our species didn't just survive, but eventually spread into nearly every environment on Earth. You don't remember any of this consciously, but your biology does. That extended, dependent childhood is why humans have, by far, the longest period of brain plasticity of any species. Years spent absorbing language, social rules, tool use, and abstract reasoning while the brain is still physically wiring itself. Other animals are born mostly finished. We are born unfinished on purpose so that culture, not just genetics, can shape who we become. It may also be why you can't help but react to a baby's face. The wide eyes, the soft features, the helplessness. Some neuroscientists have linked this to an almost automatic protective response, even measurable reward activity, firing in the adult brain. That response probably isn't an accident. A species that didn't feel a powerful, involuntary pull to protect its slow-developing young wouldn't have made it this far. And it may explain something even bigger, why humans, more than almost any other species, are wired for deep cooperation, for reciprocity, for the discomfort of watching someone struggle alone. The instinct to help a stranger, to teach someone something you know, to feel a pang of guilt when you walk past someone in need. Some evolutionary psychologists trace threads of all of this back to a period when a group's survival depended entirely on whether its members would care for the young who could not yet care for themselves. Modern life has mostly hidden this history from view. We don't raise children around a single shared fire anymore. But the underlying architecture, the instinct toward cooperative care, the discomfort with isolation, the drive to teach what we know to the next generation, is still running in the background, shaped by hundreds of thousands of years spent as a species whose children arrived helpless and whose survival depended on refusing to let that helplessness go unanswered. So here is the idea worth sitting with. The trait that almost ended the human species was never really the vulnerability of the infant itself. It was what that vulnerability demanded from everyone around it. Patience, cooperation, sacrifice, the willingness to invest years of energy into another being with no guaranteed payoff. Every species that has ever gone extinct failed, in some sense, to solve the problem its environment handed it. Early humans were handed one of the harshest versions of that problem imaginable, offspring that couldn't survive without years of communal effort, in a world with no guarantee that effort would be rewarded. And instead of that problem ending us, it appears to have built the very thing that made us unstoppable. The ability to cooperate at a scale and across a time span that no other species on Earth has ever matched. Not raw strength. Not speed, not sharp teeth or claws. Helplessness, met with commitment, may be the actual origin story of human civilization. Somewhere, right now, a child is being carried by someone who is not its mother. A teacher is explaining something to a student who cannot yet repay them. A stranger is helping another stranger for no clear reason at all. None of it looks like survival. It looks like kindness or duty or love. But it may be the oldest strategy our species ever developed. Older than language, older than fire, older than almost anything we consider civilization. The idea that a creature too weak to survive alone might, if enough people refuse to look away, become the reason an entire species makes it through. Maybe that's the real inheritance passed down from every human who came before you. Not strength, not certainty, just the quiet, stubborn refusal to let something helpless be left behind.